Why are so many doctors leaving medicine?
So why did I even decide to be a doctor if I was just going to quit after residency anyway?
Why did I drop out of medical school? Fair question. I left because my dream was not worth my life.
I spent 5 years in medical school to become a doctor. I grew up in Kingston, Jamaica, worked hard, got into medicine, and eventually landed what I thought was my dream job. I had the title, the stability, but then I realized I actually didn't want this career. So I left, and for the last 3 years, I've been working in marketing instead. And in this video, I'm going to break down exactly why I left and whether leaving medicine is actually the right move for you. So if you're new here, hi, I'm Matthew Lee. I trained as a medical doctor, but I since pivoted into marketing after doing my master's in the UK. So in this video, I want to walk you through why I realized medicine wasn't right for me, why I chose marketing specifically, and how I made that switch without starting from zero. Because leaving medicine wasn't just a job change for me, it was a whole identity shift. I was walking away from 5 years of training, expectations, and a stable future. So if you're a doctor, a medical student, or just someone thinking about a big career pivot, this video will help you think about it properly. Let's get into it. Chapter 1. The real reason I left medicine. So medicine for me wasn't just a career choice, it was sort of the family path. I grew up in a family of all ophthalmologists, both my parents, my grandparents, and my siblings. So from early on, medicine didn't feel like one option among so many. It sort of felt predetermined. And by the time I got into medical school, it wasn't just my dream, it was everyone's expectation. And to be clear, I'm really grateful for that upbringing. I had incredible role models. I saw the impact medicine could have. I understood the prestige, the stability, and the security of that job. But somewhere along the lines of medical school, something started to feel off. And I couldn't really understand it at first. I just noticed that the parts of my week that I enjoyed most weren't the clinical ones. And I found myself more energized by building things. I really wanted to lead projects. I loved thinking about systems, strategy, improvements, how things could work better. So I just kept telling myself that maybe it was the stress of medical school. Maybe it was just the constant exams. And once I qualify, things will feel different. And honestly, you kind of hear the same advice from everyone. You know, once you get through year 1, once you get through year 2, once you finish medical school, it's all gonna get better. So I did what I was supposed to do. I finished the degree and I started working in the hospital. But instead of feeling fulfilled, I actually felt heavier and probably the most unhappy I have ever been in my life. And on paper, I had done everything right. I had the grades, I studied hard, I had the training, I had the job, and I was hardworking. But internally, I felt like something was definitely off. And that's sort of a strange place to be. Because when you put all of this effort in, and on paper, it looks like you're really successful, but quietly, you're really questioning all your choices every day. And then something crazy happened in my final year of medical school. After finishing my final exams, I was diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome. And sort of when I started working, the long hospital shifts, the unpredictable schedules, the high stress of everything, it really amplified everything. It forced me to confront something that I have always been quietly ignoring, that this lifestyle for me was not sustainable. It wasn't physically or mentally sustainable. And I really don't say this lightly because plenty of people do manage it and plenty of people thrive in these kind of environments. But I had to be honest with myself that this probably wasn't the right path for me. And sort of at the same time, something unexpected happened. I got accepted in a program in the UK that would allow me to do my master's, and it would allow me to continue playing badminton at a semi-professional level. But I think most importantly, it gave me time and space to think, space to step back, and space to ask myself whether I was choosing medicine or just continuing what 18-year-old me thought was a good idea. So I was at a fork in the road. And for me, the hardest part really wasn't the career change. It wasn't the pay. It wasn't even the degree. It was sort of my whole identity. Because think about it, when you spend 5 years to become a doctor, that label sort of becomes part of who you are. And when you want to walk away from that, it's not as simple as a simple career pivot. It starts to feel like you're starting over from completely nothing after spending the last 5 years working really hard towards it. But deep down, I knew I had to at least give myself the chance to explore an alternative. And that's where the real life pivot began. Chapter 2, Why Marketing? So once I had admitted to myself that medicine wasn't my long-term path, the next obvious question was, why marketing? And to be honest, it wasn't random. When I zoomed out, I realized I had already been doing marketing for years. I just wasn't calling it that. So back home in Jamaica, I had already helped family businesses with things like marketing campaigns, advertisement, website development, even hiring people to help drive sales. I was the one thinking about positioning, messaging, pricing, and how do we actually get people to buy. And at the time, I didn't think of it as a career path. It was just something I enjoyed figuring out. But then there was a huge turning point, which was badminton. So during my final year of medical school, I built a badminton coaching business. And running that business forced me to learn real practical marketing skills. So essentially, I skipped the theory and went straight to the practical side of actually driving revenue. I had to figure out, how do I run Facebook and Instagram ads? How do I use social media properly? How do I create offers? How do I price sessions? How do I convert interest into actual paying customers? And if I didn't get this right, nobody would show up. And here's kind of where I realized something really important. I genuinely enjoyed that process. I enjoyed testing ideas. I enjoyed building systems. I enjoyed seeing something go from concept to actually making money. And then when I compared that feeling to how I felt doing long hospital shifts, the difference was really obvious. The marketing work really energized me. Clinical medicine really drained me. And that was really hard to admit because medicine is respected, it's stable, and it's structured. Marketing felt uncertain. A commercial path that was less traditional, and I didn't know anyone close pursuing that. But you know, when I really thought about it deeper, it really made a lot of sense for me because healthcare companies struggle with communication. A lot of health marketing is either too technical, poorly explained, or disconnected from what people actually care about. And I sort of saw that as my niche. What if I could combine medical credibility, clinical knowledge, and marketing strategy? Instead of abandoning medicine completely, I could reposition myself. I wouldn't be the doctor in the hospital. I could be the doctor helping health companies communicate better, helping them grow their market and build products that actually make sense clinically. Marketing sits at the intersection of business, psychology, systems, and growth. And when I looked at my personality, I realized I was more drawn to building and scaling things than practicing medicine long term. So at least for me, choosing marketing wasn't running away from medicine. It was me moving towards something that felt more aligned. And once that clicked, the next challenge became, how do I actually make the switch in the real world? Chapter 3, How I Actually Made the Switch. So once I had decided that I wanted to move into marketing, the next big question was, how do you actually do that as a doctor? Because on paper, it doesn't really look that obvious. I didn't have a formal marketing job title. I didn't work in an agency, and I didn't come from a business background. But thankfully, I didn't have to start from zero. So before moving to the UK, I had already worked with healthcare brands back home. I helped with marketing, website development, and hiring people to drive sales. I had run ads for my badminton business. I understood revenue, and I understood marketing positioning. So instead of thinking, I need to completely reinvent myself, I thought, how do I reposition what I already know? And I think that shift in thinking was probably the most important thing I did. So when I finally moved to the UK and did my master's in management, I was really intentional about it. I really focused heavily on the marketing modules, think strategy, branding, consumer behavior, analytics. I wanted to build a language around something I was already doing intuitively. And at the same time, I knew the master's was only 1 year in the UK. So I was applying to jobs, and a lot of jobs. I wasn't being picky about the titles. I wasn't waiting for the perfect role. I just knew that I needed to get my foot in the door because I was joining a new industry in a new location. And thankfully, I was eventually headhunted by a co-founder at a health tech startup that I had applied to on LinkedIn. So I started off with medical writing, which, if you think about it, makes a lot of sense. I had the clinical background, I understood science, and I could translate complex medical ideas into simple language. But really quickly, I started to help a lot more than just writing. I got involved in messaging, in campaign ideas, in market positioning, and really shaping how the company communicated their value. And because I understood from both the clinical and commercial sides, I could sit in both conversations. So instead of being that doctor delivering care, I became the person helping the healthcare companies grow responsibly, and communicating properly. And one of the most important parts of that transition was crafting my story. Because if you show up in the interview and say, I left medicine for marketing, it sounds a bit reckless and impulsive. But if you're able to explain certain things like, I built similar structures for similar healthcare businesses before, I ran campaigns before, I understood revenue, I can close the gap in healthcare and communications, then this makes sense to the employer. So I had to learn how to articulate myself properly and really share my narrative. So I think the biggest lesson from all of that was that career pivots are really big dramatic jumps. They're usually repositionings, and you're taking the skills you already have and you're moving slightly adjacently. You build credibility and then you sort of expand from that. So I didn't wake up one day and say I wanted to work in marketing. So I sort of learned and practiced one skill at a time. And that's something I think more people need to hear. Chapter 4. Should you leave medicine too? So after hearing my story, the obvious question is, should you leave medicine as well? And I think this is where I really need to be honest. I'm not here to tell you to quit. And I'm definitely not here to tell you that medicine is a bad career. For a lot of people, it's really meaningful, it's stable, it's fulfilling, and it's something they can really thrive in. But if you're watching this video, there's probably a reason why. So here are a few things I'd seriously think about before making a decision like I did. So first is, you have to make sure you're not just reacting to a bad season. So like life, medicine is hard, training is hard, and burnout is definitely a real thing. But there's a huge difference between, I hate this rotation and I don't want this career long term. Those are two very different problems that you need to seriously think about. The second is, don't jump in blindly. So before I left medicine, I had already built a small business, ran marketing campaigns, worked with multiple healthcare brands, and tested whether I actually enjoyed marketing. I didn't just wake up one day and quit. I built adjacent skills first. So if you're thinking about pivoting, ask yourself, have you actually tested the alternative? Or are you sort of just fantasizing about it? And the third is, understand that identity is the hardest part. Letting go of that title, letting go of the expectations, and letting go of what your teenage self thought you were going to become. That for me is the real challenge. It's not the pay, it's not the prestige, it's sort of the story you've built around yourself and your identity. And finally, your degree isn't wasted. Even if you do decide to leave clinical medicine, you don't erase those years of training. You sort of just reposition it. For example, medicine taught me discipline. It taught me communication. It taught me how to handle pressure. It gave me a badge of credibility that I just decided to use differently. So the takeaway is, if you're thinking of leaving, don't think of it as throwing everything away. Think of it as asking, where do my skills create the most leverage? For me personally, the answer wasn't the hospital. That might be different for you, and that's completely okay. The point of this video wasn't to let people copy my path. The real point of the video was to share my story so that you could intentionally think about what you want to do with your career. So that's how I switched from medicine to marketing. It wasn't that dramatic, and it definitely wasn't an overnight success. It was really slow, it was very uncomfortable, but it was very intentional from my part. So if you're a doctor, a med student, thinking about pivoting, I'd genuinely love to know what you're considering. Are you thinking about business, tech, something completely different? Let me know in the comments. I'll read every single one and reply to every one of them. And if you want me to break down exactly how I landed my first marketing role in health tech, step by step, I'll make sure to do that in the next video. Subscribe if you want more honest videos like this. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.